Let's take a look at one of the statements by Jackson and some background information about this individual. As we read today, I'm going to do a think aloud with you and really consider the background information being presented. So let's start reading. Frederick Jackson Turner shared his ideas on America's settlements of the West in his frontier thesis. He was a teacher and a scholar at the University of Wisconsin and then at Harvard until he retired in 1924. Hmm. So I highlighted this sentence about him being a scholar at the University of Wisconsin. Turner taught at the University of Wisconsin and Harvard. He was pretty well educated. This makes me think that the information that he's sharing can be trusted and is reliable. Let's keep reading and see what else we can find out about Frederick Jackson Turner. He presented his ideas in a speech, The Significance of the Frontier in American History, which he gave at a Chicago's World Fair in 1893. In the speech, Turner described the frontier as a place that was a meeting point between civilization and savagery. He claimed that the frontier was a free land, ready to be Americanized by strong white pioneers. Turner attributed the rugged pioneers with the dominant individualism that helped them triumphantly conquer the West. I highlighted this sentence here because I began to think about this quote where he states that it is a meeting point between civilization and savagery. I'm wondering that if he had lived in universities and he, especially in the East, how did he know about this frontier? Did he ever visit it? Maybe his information is not so reliable. These are definitely important points that I want to consider thinking about as I keep reading. Let's continue looking at an excerpt from his famous thesis. The United States lies like a huge page in the history of society. By huge page, he's trying to say that it is an important part of the story of our past and the story of people. Line by line, as we read from west to east, we find the record of social evolution. By social evolution, I think that what he means is that we're looking at this idea of westward expansion. He agrees with this information and the idea of manifest destiny, which is the idea of moving westward. That is, as America expanded westward, you can see evidence of society evolving or getting better. Maybe spreading ideas like democracy and technology that transform the nation and territory. Let's keep reading. It begins with the Indian and the hunter. It goes on to tell of the disintegration of savagery by the entrance of the trader, the pathfinder of civilization. We read the annals of the pastoral stage in ranch life, the exploitation of the soil by the raising of unrotated crops of corn and wheat in sparsely settled farm communities, the intensive culture of the denser farm settlement, and finally, the manufacturing organization with city and factory system. It's interesting that he states this disintegration of savagery. It seems somewhat biased that he would make a statement such as this, especially using the word savagery. It seems that he's trying to say that the native people, the Native Americans or Indians who were here, were savages. And there was something wrong with the way that they lived that had to be made better once Americans came west and began to have this westward expansion and slow transition to city and factory life. So ultimately, let's take a look and really consider Turner's claim, his argument or perspective. Well, it seems that he's arguing that the United States history was an important part of a larger story that involved the evolution of society, expansion of land, and spreading of ideas. He states that this story begins with the native peoples and speaks negatively about the way that they lived. He continues on to argue that westward expansion is positive and progressed from pastoral and agricultural life to manufacturing in cities and the factory system. At this point, you can pause this video and ask yourself if you believe that Turner's position on westward expansion is reliable or not. Okay, social studies scholars, now let's take a moment to pause and practice. We are going to now analyze a primary source and consider the information we just read about from Turner and whether it corroborates with Turner's position. As we read, we can ask ourselves some of these questions in our minds. What does this document say? And does the document agree with Turner? And if not, why? And is it reliable? So let's take a look. First, it's always important to glance down at the source to get a sense of who our speaker is and when this primary source was said or delivered. In this case, it is President James Polk, March 4th, 1845, in his inaugural address. So let's see what President Polk says. Nor will it become in a less degree my duty to assert and maintain by all constitutional means the right of the United States to that portion of our territory which lies beyond the Rocky Mountains. It sounds here like he's stating that the United States has the right to move into this territory beyond the Rocky Mountains. This sounds very similar to things that Turner discussed about westward expansion and manifest destiny, moving westward. Our title to the country of the Oregon is clear and unquestionable, and already are our people preparing to perfect that title by occupying it with their wives and children. Here it sounds like Polk is saying that the people are ready to move westward and to take that land and claim it as their own. This again sounds very similar to some of these ideas about Native Americans or the Indians who were living there, and this idea of perhaps savagery and pushing them out to make way for American people and others who are wanting to move westward. In this case, I would argue that the document certainly does agree with Turner's position in agreement with westward expansion and the evolution of society. So this document certainly does corroborate with Turner's point of view. Okay, social studies scholars, I hope that this video helped you better understand the idea of corroboration, especially reviewing an example in connection to Turner's writing. Now it is your mission to complete the rest of your independent assignment for today's lesson. This includes the third step for your task, where you will be reading other perspectives to see if they corroborate with Turner's thesis. Great work today, social studies scholars. I will see you next time, and happy learning.